Hello, my name is Mike Gorton. For this report, I'm going to focus on the effect that pollution has on the health and economic issues in China. Now, it's no secret that China has a pollution problem. Huffington Post reports that 47% of the world's coal is consumed by China, which leads to air pollution. The Economist reports that 25% of surface water is actually too dangerous to consume. And Reuters reports that 90% of groundwater is considered dangerous. They also report that 60% of groundwater in China is actually unfit for even industrial uses. So the current policies of the Chinese government and industry leaders seems to confirm an emphasis on economic expansion at all costs. So what is the solution? Many advocate for a change in policy, a combination of government and industry leaders tackling the pollution problem, because the pollution problem is actually reinforcing. You see economic as a driver for industrialization, which leads to increased pollution, coupled with increased demand because of population growth and expanding industry, resulting in a decreased quality of life, according to reports, all within an unsustainable system. Now, the popular suggested intervention is to enact these environmental policy changes. And so to measure these policy changes, we're going to use the International Futures Model. It's a large-scale, long-term integrated global modeling system that takes into account demographics, economics, energy, agriculture, socio-political, and environmental subsystems for 183 countries interacting in a global system, and it allows us to measure changes over time. We can actually place a baseline case against a scenario where we, in a sense, turn the dials and move the knobs a little to see what will happen. So let's look at the current trends for China in our measurable areas. In a baseline forecast, you see the life expectancy is going to increase by about 7.8%. You see the crude death rate will also increase. Economically, you see in the gross domestic product an increase from $2,700 per person to just over $20,000, so a 750% increase. Now, I like this measurement, the Advanced Sustainable Gross Domestic Product. I like it because it evaluates a nation's natural resources and how their use impacts GDP. In other words, how much income is generated using resources and how long can those resources be sustained within the system. And what you see is a substantial decrease between 2010 and 2040 from 145 units down to 17 per billion. You see their water resources remain unchanged over the next 30 years. Their carbon emissions will increase slightly from 21 billion tons to 22 billion tons. So when we turn the knobs, what are we talking about? When it comes to air pollution, we're going to, through the IS model, reduce carbon dioxide by 50%, which is a significant reduction. We're going to increase the H2O variables by 100% across the board. So we're going to improve their water by 100%. And we're going to look at these inputs implemented in 2010 and what they would look like if carried through to 2040. So what can we expect when comparing the baseline to the adjusted forecast? For life expectancy, you see a minimal increase. Over the next 30 years, an increase by about 3 weeks difference between the baseline as is case and if we turn all the knobs and made the adjustments to the pollution scenario. You see the crude death rate will remain the same. And the GDP per capita will increase slightly, and notice that it's only a gain of about $150 per person over 30 years with these changes. I like this chart, the Advanced Sustainable GDP. I've included it because the scenario produced the widest variance, and interestingly, the gap is early in the scenario rather than later. It's about a 60% increase in cost and decrease in GDP in order to make the scenario take place. In other words, to implement these changes to the pollution model are going to cost the nation of China. But notice that in 2040, both equalize. So what are the conclusions? That air and water policy changes result in minimal improvements to the population and economics within the IS variables. That the research that has been reported, it appears, focuses on the macro level of isolated incidents rather than the macro level for evidence. That major pollution policy changes reveal minimal improvement over time. And the bottom line is that curbing pollution for China is not necessarily the problem. So other possible variables for consideration in future work might be the healthcare, economic, or education variables. Any questions? Once again, my name is Mike Gorton. My contact information is available. Thank you.